Health and wellness are more than a destination. They are a process and a journey of personal choice. Come hear from people out in the field, doing the work, bringing health and wellness to many.
Hello, everyone. We have Larry Law again to our channel because he is such an expert in the field we're going to talk about today. Thank you for joining us, Larry. This is
so glad to be here.
Oh, it's always so great to have you. Now, Larry is an expert on vitamin and minerals and supplementation. You have become a world expert on this. I am so happy to have you here to share what you know, your knowledge, how important this is for the world. Tell us a little bit how you even got interested in the topic of supplementation.
Well, vitamins and minerals kind of was a side effort because my wife was sick and she had been sick for years and we were trying to figure out what was the matter. And so we had exhausted all the doctors and all the specialists and had gone to natural modalities trying to find answers. And we found some wonderful answers in the science of glycobiology. And so that made a huge difference. But as I was going through that science, I started to stumble on other things related, which included vitamins and minerals, and was just really amazed that there were synthetic and inorganic vitamins and minerals out there. In fact, 95% of what was sold on the market. And that's why none of those things were actually helping her in her wellness journey. So I started looking into what are the difference between plant-based vitamins, minerals, and synthetic and inorganic ones.
That's amazing. That must have been quite a shock because you said she was taking a lot of vitamin and minerals. And
we were paying $400 to a nutritionist, and we were taking 50 supplements. She was taking 50 supplements, and there was a little bit of benefit, but there wasn't, compared to the investment we were making, just not enough. And so as I started to investigate, I found these hidden truths that were in this field of vitamins and minerals, and realized that we were not getting the things that her body would recognize, and that natural food, real food, is very, very different than what you buy in the store. These isolated chemicals are not what your body utilizes, and in fact, they can hurt you in pretty dramatic ways.
So tell me a little bit about this journey. So she was taking 50 supplements. When did you get a clue that these supplements actually, when did you find the difference between synthetic and organic supplements? Because this was your first realization, right?
Correct. Yeah. So as I started to we were putting a lot of money out the door every month, $400 for the nutritionist, and then 50 supplements on top of that. You can imagine the amount of money, but she was sick. And so we were trying to figure out how to get her better. So as I looked at the vitamins and the minerals that we were being told to purchase, it started to dawn on me that they were very different than what we were getting in our garden. And we had a garden, and but there was a huge difference. These were isolated chemicals that were created in a laboratory, and they told us that the essence of the vitamin was being captured, but there in the details, that's where the devil was. They were not getting all the synergistic cofactors. For example, vitamin C. They were selling ascorbic acid as vitamin C, and ascorbic acid is only 5% of that vitamin C complex. And so as you look at that, you're not getting the other 99%. And we had no idea. It's kind of like you're getting the envelope and missing the letter. And the envelope is nice, but you want to get the details of the message, which is in the letter. And so you're not getting it when you don't get vitamin C complex. And so that was huge. And so as I just started to peel back that onion, I just started to learn more and more, and reading different books. There's a great book called Whole by Dr. T. Cullen Campbell, which has some great information. I didn't stumble onto that one for years, but it validated everything that I was looking at and seeing.
So obviously, like the best organic whole foods, if we could get good food, would be the best. But
Correct.
that's not what we have, right? Can you share a little bit about the problem?
You bet. So one of the stories that was in one of the researchers that worked with Dr. Campbell was a Chinese doctor, Dr. Liu, and he did a very interesting thing. His dad actually worked in a market, so he was familiar with fruits and vegetables and their antioxidant properties and capabilities. And so he did a study when he was at Cornell, and so he took half a cup of apples, sliced apples, and he started to measure the antioxidant capability in these apples. And so he had 100 grams of apple, and he measured the vitamin C capability and found it was worth 1,500 milligrams. So he's looking at these apples and he analyzes the ascorbic acid in it and finds it's about 5.7 milligrams. So you've got 5.7 milligrams of ascorbic acid, but you're getting 1,500 milligrams of power, of antioxidant power. And he's like, that doesn't work out. You should be getting 5.7, but you're getting this huge 263 times the amount from this apple. And so as he started to look at it, basically he was saying, the ascorbic acid represents 1%, but there's 99% of the power somewhere else that's not in the ascorbic acid. And so as he started to look at the apple and what was in it, he started finding these cofactors, part of what vitamin C complex really is. These other vitamin C-like chemicals that people had not accounted for. They have names like quercetin, catechin, fluorescein, chlorogenic acid. There's thousands of them, and they all serve to make that ascorbic acid and that vitamin C complex give it the power. So that 1,500 milligrams of power was coming from these other synergistic cofactors. And that's why the apple was thousands of times more powerful than the essence of ascorbic acid, which is what being sold for vitamin C. So that showed me that we have kind of a reductionist philosophy in the nutritional world, in the scientific community. They're looking for where is that part that's making everything happen. But when you do that, you zero in and you miss all of the other surrounding cofactors. And in vitamin C, it's a perfect example. When you take out the ascorbic acid, it's just not as powerful as what it is in the real food. So you want the whole food, you want all of those cofactors, those enzymes that make vitamin C do what vitamin C does. So getting it in a pill won't give that to you. It's much better to eat the orange or the peach. That's where all these other chemicals come from. And so when you can find a supplement that actually freeze dries that material in a way that captures it and doesn't destroy it, and then can give it the shelf life that it needs, because it's usually destroyed with heat and air and being exposed. Vitamins are very fragile organic chemicals, and they don't store well. And so if you can capture it like that in a freeze-dried herb or fruit, you're going to capture more of that, those cofactors, and that will give you the power that you need. Of course, it's never as good as getting it from the whole real fruit, but to be able to supplement when you can't get the fruit, that's the next best step.
So that's so interesting, because like from my knowledge, the food itself is depleted. Yeah. So why did we have to get vitamins in the first place? Why do we have to supplement at all? Why?
Well, exactly. Well, that's a great question. And if we were in a perfect world, we'd just get it from our food. We wouldn't have to supplement. But what happens is it's interesting that as we try to get fruit and vegetables to market, these are living whole things. And so they don't store very well. And so the transportation logistical system of getting it out to people who maybe don't live in those areas, they live in colder climates, or they don't have access to it, it gets more difficult. And so to provide that to people. They try to stabilize it, give it a shelf life to be able to withstand the journey. And so that's why they narrowed down that, trying to find the essence of the vitamin and what's the most important part and what can we stabilize. But in that whole process, they missed the power that comes. So you get a little bit, that 5.7, but you're missing the 1500. So that's just huge. And so over time, our bodies, if you're not eating it in your diet, you're lacking it. And so even when you try to supplement, you're still lacking. You think you're trying to make up. And that's what we found with Angie, is that we weren't getting any of the power. We knew these things were good, but it wasn't doing anything good in her body. And it wasn't until we found those real plant-based vitamins and minerals, because plants are able to put a food matrix around minerals, around vitamins, and your body is built to recognize that, and it takes it in and is able to use the power that is represented there.
So what I'm hearing you say is that it's best to get everything from food, but because of the soil depletion and food harvesting and all these environmental factors we're going through, this is why supplementation began many years ago, because people feel that we weren't getting what we wanted. But right now, it's best to get it from real food supplements if you had to do anything.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you want to get it from people, growers who know how to do it, because even, for example, harvesting a peach off a tree, the peach can vary in its vitamin A, vitamin levels. Just the position on the tree can vary 40 times in this amount of vitamins. So even when you're getting whole food, you have to be careful, because people don't always assay or measure the level of these things. It's a difficult process to do that. And so you have to have organic growers. You definitely want non-GMO. You want to have people who know local is usually the best, because that's the environment you're in. So if you can find those things, people who can treat the soil, as you mentioned, farmers who know how to, because if you don't put the minerals in the soil, they're not going to get into the plant. And it turns out that probably minerals are the most important thing. Vitamins are essential, of course, but if I had to pick between vitamins and minerals, minerals will work in your body to a lower degree without vitamins. But if you don't have the minerals, the vitamins are useless. Vitamins are what allow the minerals to do what they do, and we need those minerals in our body.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. What are minerals and what do they do?
So while vitamins are more organic molecules and they're susceptible to heat and oxidation from air, they're more fragile. The minerals are more inorganic, they're more stable. What that means is that their chemical structure is not broken down by the body. They use that molecule in the body. The key is, though, you want to get plant-based minerals, because they're just little rocks. If you were trying to go out there and eat it, zinc or calcium, the way they provide it, calcium carbonate or calcium citrate, are just little like chalk, ground up into little particles. So when you try to absorb it in your body, you don't do a good job with it. You just can't. You get 5 to 7% absorption of calcium, and you just can't get it into your body. So we like to get it from plant-based, because foods like spinach or kale, as the plant takes those minerals into it, it will put it wrap it around in a food matrix. And that food matrix is something that your body can unwrap and then utilize the minerals. So the bioavailability, meaning the absorption capability of getting it from outside to inside and actually down to the cell, not just in the bloodstream, but actually to the cell, is important. And that's what that food matrix does, the plants help both vitamins and minerals, but especially minerals, to get into our body to increase that absorption. And when you have plant-based minerals, they're still inorganic minerals, but they're wrapped around with this food matrix, and so you can get them. And so minerals are hugely important in the body. Vitamins, of course, are important. Both of them are used for different processes. They're like coenzymes. They help enzymes work. They help get energy out of food, vitamins especially. But minerals are very, very important in just thousands of metabolic processes. I'll give you one example. For example, everybody's experienced COVID. And so zinc turned out to be a key component in fighting COVID for those who were trying to find natural solutions. And there are lots of natural solutions. Vaccines were not the answer. In fact, vaccines now, they understand, is clear, don't work. They're not safe or effective because you still get COVID. In fact, the people who are vaccinated are spreading COVID more than the vaccinated who never were really spreading it. So once you get COVID, your immune system makes you immune. But one of the keys, if you were unvaccinated, and the power of these minerals is the fact that you've probably heard about things like hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, but zinc was the key component. So when you take those drugs, they're pretty benign drugs, but they serve as ionospores, which means that they embed themselves in the glycocalyx of the cell, in the cell membrane, and they serve as a gate, a door. And so they are able to shuttle zinc from the outside into the inside. And zinc, the zinc ion, when it's broken down out of the food matrix, is a positive 2 ion. And so it can't get into the cell unless it has a helper get it in from the outside to the inside, because it's a different charge, and so it won't come across. So these ionospores would take that zinc and bring it from the outside of the cell to the inside. And what zinc did was it disrupted the viral replication cycle. So when you have zinc inside your cell, it interrupts the ability of the virus to replicate. It just shuts it down. Zinc. And so these minerals are used in thousands of ways. They serve these metabolic processes, and we didn't even understand that when COVID first came along. But that's how COVID, the virus, and not just COVID, but many, many viruses are shut down with zinc, and that's what it does. And so it disrupts that process. And so minerals boost our immune system. They do all kinds of things to, create healthy tissue, to keep the tissue healthy, to boost our immune system. So very, very important to have good minerals.
Like magnesium.
Magnesium, yeah.
So many different ones. So many people want to supplement with magnesium, especially when they get older. And calcium.
Yes, I'll talk a little bit about magnesium and calcium. Those are two amazing minerals. And so what you find with vitamins and minerals is that they have this, they're juxtaposed to each other. So for example, they operate in tandem. Calcium is an exciter. In muscles, calcium is an electrical charge. It will make the muscle constrict. So tighten, and so which we need, but you don't want your muscles to just stay tightened. So what relaxes them? Well, as soon as calcium comes into the cell and causes that metabolic reaction of tightening, constricting, then it's shuttled out of the cell, and magnesium forces it out. Magnesium comes in and relaxes it. So the relaxation, so the tightening and relaxing. If you think of your heart, if you think of your arteries, of how they pump blood, how they constrict and then they relax, constrict, relax. This is what helps the blood flow throughout your body. So your circulatory system is hugely dependent upon calcium and magnesium. And it turns out that magnesium seems to be a key mineral that more than even calcium, even though calcium got all the attention because of bone problems. Calcium is only one of 12 minerals that make bones. Calcium, you need all the other minerals. So it turned out that there were lots of problems with the calcium supplementation that people were doing because they were doing, again, the inorganic calcium carbonate, calcium citrate, trying to build strong bones. But all these other minerals were key. And the inorganics, without being done in the food matrix or being the natural kind of calcium that you get out of spinach and those kinds of things, was doing damage. And so we would get calcified deposits in the arteries. And so calcified plaque would build up, and that would give you hardening of the arteries, because calcium, when it's not utilized properly, leaves a concrete kind of plaque. And so your arteries are no longer able to constrict and loosen. Magnesium turns out to be huge because it keeps calcium in solution. It doesn't allow calcium to dissipate out of solution in the blood. And so magnesium is huge. And so a lot of older people will see dramatic results almost immediately because as we get older, our mineral depletion gets more serious. You'll notice if you have cramps, lots of times older people, young people too, but older people will have cramps at night. Their muscles would just constrict. So calcium's causing that constriction, but you don't have enough magnesium to relax it. And you get these Charlie horses and these things that wake you up at night. If you get enough magnesium in your body, and again, not just in your blood, there's a difference between measuring it in your blood and measuring it in the cell. And the cell is where you need it, not just the blood. And it just doesn't get to the cell because it's in the bloodstream. It's more difficult than that. But when you have food-based magnesium, plant-based magnesium, and you can get it to the cell, then you'll realize you won't have those cramps anymore. So your sleep will get better, lots of things. Magnesium is used in over 300 metabolic processes that we know of, and we're constantly learning more and more. So minerals are huge, but you have to be careful not to megadose or overdose, because if you do one, you hurt another one. If you do too much magnesium, you're going to hurt calcium and vice versa. But that's true of all the minerals, iron, phosphorus, all of it. You have to be so careful. You allow the body to regulate, and you provide a buffet, not too much, but enough. And you allow the body, because the body is constantly sensing throughout the day, mineral and vitamin levels, and it's using them today, this hour, this second, and it's not using some because it knows what it needs, where it needs it, and it's always changing. And if you provide too much, you damage then the availability of other minerals that the body may need, in fact. So you do have to be careful.
Danger of the synthetics. So
yes.
If you had to describe, maybe someone out there doesn't know what you mean by synthetic, and they don't know what you mean by organic, because if they're not a scientist, they might not.
Yeah.
Can you explain that, Larry?
So for vitamins, synthetic vitamins are typically made from coal tar, or a petroleum product. So they manipulate the carbon structures from coal tar. If you think of that black tar that people put out on asphalt roads to build asphalt highways, that's coal tar. So it's a black, slimy solution. Now you can manipulate the carbon structure in it. You can make plastics. In fact, plastic is the most is the biggest thing that the petrol companies make. You'd think it would be gasoline, but it's actually plastic. So they can make plastics. They can do all kinds of things. They can make these vitamins. So they just manipulate the carbon structures in a laboratory, and so you create the essence of this vitamin. But just thinking about it, you're like, okay, So when they create it, it's not exactly right. I mean, the carbons are in the right spot, but there are things that are not quite right with it. So one of the things is the geometry of these chemicals are very, very important. There's a levo and a dextro, an L and a D form. If you study any of the chemistry, and I won't get into too much of that, but there are things like L mannose, D mannose. There's an L and a D form. And so when they make these things synthetically, they're almost always the wrong orientation. So for the sugars that we teach about in glycobiology, you want normally D, you want a dextro, you want a right spin on the orientation of the molecule. So you want it to spin to the right, that dextro or D mannose or D glucosamine.
Then the body can handle it. So
yes, because
say something real quick, because maybe
yes, go ahead.
Like just to kind of summarize. So because I think for some people this is really complicated, but bottom line is synthetic vitamins are made of coal tar and petroleum, and we're just not meant to be eating plastic and rocks. We can't absorb the nutrition. And so what you're explaining right now with it going in a certain direction, chemical, that's making, if we eat synthetic vitamins like we would eat, if we eat plastic for dinner, we're not going to get much nutrition from it.
Correct. So it's not, the body won't recognize it, and the body cares about the geometry. It cares about these little things that the chemists cannot get correct.
But if I say to a layperson, if you eat a rock, would you want to eat a rock for dinner? They'll understand. But if they say this more complicated thing, they're going to be going, I understand. But so if you think about eating a rock for dinner, I think all of us would agree that would be not only would it be difficult to eat, but we wouldn't really like it and we wouldn't get much from it. So why was it even thought of to make us eat this?
Because they thought first of all, they're trying to get shelf life. So they're trying to capture these things that are sometimes pretty fragile and stabilize them and provide that nutrient. Again, no one was trying to kill us, but they weren't smart enough. We're not. And the whole philosophy of reductionism is to try to break these things down into their little parts and pieces. But when you do that, you miss the whole synergy of how they work together. So now you have this little part, and that's nice, but it doesn't represent the true power, because that little part operates in a bigger fixture, and without the rest, it doesn't work correctly. And so they were just focused on getting the essence of what's the most important, delivering it, stabilizing it, because that's simpler to do. And but they missed 100 things, like the spin, like all these other things, that they're not actually identical, even though the claim was that they were identical, and that's how they marketed it. It wasn't identical, and for some of those reasons I've shared. And the body cares. It's a mirror copy, and it's not the same. It's a reflection that's not right, and so it just doesn't do the body good.
So it's not just the vitamin industry that has exploited this, but it's also the food industry, because I know there's a lot of cereals and a lot of things that have added vitamins and minerals, like added calcium, added this, but it's not the real deal.
That's a great observation. They fortify foods with these inorganic and synthetic vitamins and minerals. And you can always tell on a label because they're usually high amounts because they figure more is better. And so, but you can't get those kind of amounts in food. So when you have food, they're going to be a lot lower, but they're going to be a lot more powerful. And that's the difference. Real food, it will look low on the scale, like that 5.7, but it will be very, very, very powerful when it's real. And that's the key. But you're right. People fortify, and that's why we have too much calcium, for example, in most people, because we fortify calcium in virtually all these things, trying to eliminate osteoporosis and bone issues. But we've actually hurt people. And the studies are there that show the damage and the harm that are caused by these synthetic and inorganics. And when you do this,
where can they find those studies?
Yeah, so we have some of them in our mention them in our wellness journey class on our website. Also, we have a book that I published that I have the studies in the book that you can look. And if you know what to look, Dr. Campbell, of course, in his book Whole, mentions the same studies, but the studies show that when you do these vitamins and minerals from real food versus the synthetic, they are helpful in the real food and they are damaging. In fact, some of them actually increase mortality risk. So which means that if you eat them, you increase your chances of early death.
Yeah, like which kind of like vitamins or minerals?
Yeah, vitamins. So vitamin beta carotene is one of them. Vitamin E. When they tried to find vitamin E, they found that they zeroed in on the tocopherols of vitamin E. There were 4 of those, but they later on, decade later, they realized that there were actually 8 what they call analogs or varieties, and they missed all the tocotrienols. And so it's like, so they tried their best at the time. But what they delivered is not what your body needs. So it's just a whole lot easier to eat the whole food and get it from whole food if you can incorporate that in your diet. But if not, and if you need to supplement, make sure you get a plant-based, something that has been freeze-dried and stabilized and is plant-based for your vitamins and minerals.
So how do people, when they're going out there, like, okay, I understand. So we want to get real food supplements that are made from food. But how do we know we're not getting like food that's been very high pesticide from China, or that it's really old? Because obviously everything that's real food can become old, right? And it can become hurting us also because it's old food. It's like, would you want to eat old food? No, I wouldn't.
Right.
Okay. So how do you know that, Larry?
So that's great. That's why you want to generally find produce that's from local farmers. I know in the Netherlands, there's some huge issues going on right now with farmers and the government. But you want to keep those farmers in business, supplying the food that they do naturally and locally to the Netherlands in your country. That way the transportation issues are minimal. You can get that food quickly to market. You can buy in the market, you can buy fresh food. So knowing particular farmers, doing business with them is always beneficial. That's what we try to do so that we know who we're purchasing our food. We've looked at, we can trust them. We typically try to, when we're looking at supplements, we have a consumer awareness guide, which we make available out on our website so that people can get an idea of am I buying a synthetic or inorganic? How do I tell? When I turn the label around, how do I know? And so we provide some of that information as a guide for people. But if you can look at things like in the US, USDA organic, the USDA seal will assure you that it's non-GMO, that it's organic. There's a non-GMO project verification label that will certify things are non-GMO. I know in Europe you do a better job than we have done in the United States. All of that GMO is, by the way, is changing to bioengineered, so it's BE now. It's the same stuff, but the marketing they realize that the word GMO is so bad, they've changed the word to bioengineered. So with lots of green stuff around it, but it's still GMO. So, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. So you want to get food that's been certified or tested, or that you're assured from the farmer that they're using non-GMO kinds of things. And your point about the pesticides, you want more organic kinds of things, which has some, but not as much as commercial farming.
Looking for vitamins that are good for us, because you said vitamin and minerals. Obviously, you explained a lot about the minerals. Can you explain a little more about the vitamins and what we would look for when we're trying to buy good vitamins?
So it's a great question. So in our consumer awareness guide, we try to give a little help to the public. If you, when you turn the label around and you look, you're looking for sourcing. If it just says vitamin C, for example, you're pretty much assured that that's going to be synthetic. The people who do it right will typically have parentheses and tell you the source, the plant that it comes from. So you'll see something about acerola berries, rose hips, something citrus. That will be a good whole food source of vitamin C. If you see ascorbic acid, even in parentheses, you've got a synthetic, because ascorbic acid is made from typically GMO corn. And so it's synthetic, it's lab produced. So you're looking for something natural in the parentheses. So as you go down, you're looking for their sourcing. And sometimes it can be nutritional yeast because they'll manufacture these things quickly. Nutritional yeast is okay as a source, but you're looking
for which vitamin?
Well, for the B vitamins, typically will come from a nutritional yeast. So these different vitamins are extricated from the food using this nutritional baker's yeast. But you're looking for things like liver, soybeans. You're looking for rice bran. That can be helpful. So again, in the guide, we list all the typical vitamins and what the natural sourcing would be okay. And we also list what's not. So what is the synthetic kinds? So for example, vitamin E, you'll see D-alpha tocopherol, or you'll see acetate, or you'll see these other chemical sounding names. So we give you a little guide, a little information on the guide to show, okay, no, that's synthetic. We do the same thing for the minerals. And it's for the minerals, it's a little easier because typically they'll end in ATE or IDE. And in Dutch, it's AAT, but you make that translation. And so you're looking at things that are either rocks, even though they're ground up really small, or salts. And so those for the minerals are two endings that kind of give you a little clue that these are just the rocks and salts. They're not from a plant. Yeah. And so eating them, it's not like they won't be of any benefit, but just remember you're getting like 5 to 7% benefit, not the 100% that you think you're getting. And so you want to get the plant-based ones. And so we try to show you that what to look out for, because it's so confusing and the whole thing is sometimes overwhelming for people. But with a little bit of education and with a guide, it can be helpful for you to know that, yeah, there is a difference. And it's a big enough difference that you want to take your time and get the right stuff. So again, whole food, real plant-based is what you're looking for.
And what vitamins, Larry, would you think most people should supplement with today? Like you would say, absolutely supplement.
Well, it's interesting. It depends on where people live. For example, vitamin D has been in the news a lot. The best way to get vitamin D is to go out in the sun, around noontime. If you can spend an hour or so out in the sun and get the sunlight. The benefit of vitamin D is vitamin D is not really a vitamin, even though we characterize it that way. It's more like a hormonal, a hormone, but it's been categorized as a vitamin. But we need that. It's huge. It was huge, especially for COVID. That vitamin is lacking in most people, but the best place to get it is from the sunlight. And the reason is not just because of the vitamin D, but because of the darkening of the skin, the melatonin that is created. You can't get that out of a pill. You can't even get it out of a real food supplement. You have to have the sun, and melatonin is a huge hormone regulator, and And if you just supplement vitamin D, you're not getting that part of it. So definitely the sun is the best place. And don't be afraid of the sun. You don't have to be out there all day long, and don't use these sunscreen blockers because most of them are toxic to you. So be careful. The only ones that are actually safe are the ones that no one uses, that kind of have that chalky white. They have little metallic kind of particles that reflect the sun away from your skin, but nobody likes to look like a chalky mess, but that's the only one that's really safe. So you have to be careful. But being out in the sun is not going to be harmful if you're not burning. Put on, a t-shirt, but you need at least an hour or so.
And get it in different places, right? You can, you don't have to get it on your face necessarily. You can wear hats and.
Yes, exactly. And you can, you get it on your back, get it on your legs.
Right now, look at the sun here.
Yeah,
the sun's
exactly.
coming as you're discussing vitamin D.
Yeah. So, but there are supplements that you can get vitamin D3. They come in lots of varieties, D1, D2. D3 is the closest to what we want. Cholecalciferol is typically the best approach. So there's good, better, and best. Vitamin A is another great example. Vitamin A, you're looking for sources. It can come from liver. It can come from fish oils. It comes from vegetables. It's just plentiful in a lot of things. But the synthetic version, when you look on the label, is going to have something about acetate or palmitate, or there won't be anything in the parentheses. It'll just say beta carotene or vitamin A. So when you see that, you've got a synthetic. So that's why you steer away from those. And the majority of what's sold out there in the market are like that. So you want to find ones that come from and say on the label that they're plant-based. And then you have to make sure that it's just not marketing, that they actually are. And so as we look at lots of different companies, we check those kinds of things out. And if people have concerns, typically they'll send an email and a picture of the label, and I can give a quick overview of it. And I'm happy to do that too. So because it's difficult.
So it's good to know, like, let's say where the company is getting their food sources.
Yes.
And it's good to know if they're using if they're organic or not, or synthetic based.
Correct.
These are the kind of things you want to investigate if you're going to get any supplements.
Right. And that they are freeze drying. That's the most optimum storage ways, because
and that there's an expiration date, right? Because if you have, that's the whole point, that these other vitamins you can use for like 6 years or longer.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense with food. So to look at that there is the expiration should be within a year, right? It shouldn't be forever.
Yeah.
These are kind of important points, aren't they?
Yeah, very.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, so we need vitamins. They do different things than minerals. Minerals help things. They're helpers, but vitamins are also helpers.
Yep.
To the main food that we need, which are the macronutrients. Maybe you just touch upon that for a minute. We need the main, proteins. We need enough protein. We need enough good fats, and we need enough of these glycans, which are the three macronutrients.
Right. Yeah. And they're essential too for the vitamins and minerals. Lots of times for vitamins, you have two types. You have water soluble vitamins, and which are all the B's, and vitamin C is water soluble. But then you also have the lipid based or the fat soluble ones, which is A, D, E, and K. So they come into your body through the digestive system, but they go through the lymphatic system and they need bile from the liver and your gallbladder, and in order to process those. The water ones come more direct through the digestive system. So just the delivery into your body, you want to, of course, have a healthy gut to be able to facilitate all of that. But all of that, yes, is definitely important. These macronutrients bind, like protein will bind to some of the fat-soluble vitamins, and that allows it to carry it through the system and get it to the cells. The minerals the same way. By the time they reach the cell, though, they are always broken down into ions. And so in order for them to cross the glycocalyx, which is the cell membrane, you have to be a separate molecule, an ion, so zinc or calcium. And so there's a charge associated with it, and they diffuse across the glycocalyx. And so you need to have a healthy glycocalyx, which represent the glycans that you teach about and talk about. Those are the regulators or the gateway that allows things to come in from outside the cell to inside the cell. So proteins like collagen is the number one form of protein that's in the body. It's the structural units that the cartilage that make you who you are and give you the structure that you need. We get plenty of that. I've never really worried too much about supplementing protein because we typically get a lot of protein.
Unless you're a vegetarian or something, and then you really...
Yeah. Well, even vegetarian, what lots of people don't understand is there's a lot of protein in vegetables. In fact, pound for pound, there's more protein, plant protein, but it's still protein than even in meat. Of course, you want both kinds. You can't get B12 from plants. You have to be eating meat. But there is a lot of plant protein that is huge, and your body utilizes it. So lots of people don't realize that protein comes from vegetables. And so that can be a great source of protein. But we advocate, of course, eating some meat, again, sparingly, but you want to have some of that. Not only does it taste good, but it has great properties like vitamin B12 and other things that fats, animal fat, that turns out to be very, very important. In fact, there's a whole study out now that shows that animal fat is what we should have stayed with instead of going to the vegetable oils and the vegetable fat that they built for, processed food and for frying. That's actually hurt us in serious ways. So the fats that you mentioned are actually good. People thought that fat made us fat back in the 1980s. There was a whole campaign. Either it was sugar or fat was the demon of making us fat. And so because it sounded like fat makes you fat, that sounds reasonable. They demonized fat. And so all the unsaturated, polyunsaturated, all this war against avocados, against everything, until finally after 40 years they realized that, oh my gosh, not only do we create an epidemic of diabetes, it turns out that there was this hidden mechanism, the de novo lipogenesis system, that takes sugar and makes fat from sugar. It's sugar that was the culprit. There's a way the body takes sugar and makes fat. And that's what makes you fat. And we have so much sugar in processed food because
everything.
Yeah, when you eliminate the fat and go to no fat, low fat, the food tastes like cardboard. So they added tons of sugar so that people would still eat it. And that's what has caused our diabetes to just exponentially increase. So you want fat. You all of the demonized fats turn out to be important to your health. You need cholesterol. All the demonizing of cholesterol, all of that is fake science. And when you read the studies, even the original studies, and you go through and read the meat of the study, not the conclusion, which was written for the people, the pharmaceuticals who were trying to sell statin drugs, you find that in the study, high cholesterol is protective of brain health and heart health, both. And so you want high cholesterol. You do not want low cholesterol unless you want Alzheimer's. Your brain is 25% cholesterol. If you limit the cholesterol mechanisms that are built into almost every cell of your body, you will damage your health. And so all of that, and you definitely don't want statin drugs. So you do not want to lower that cholesterol. So you have to understand that there's a huge push to sell drugs. There's a huge push. They lower the levels, like for blood pressure, for cholesterol, all of those lowered over the decades so that they could put more people at risk artificially and get them on medication. So there's kind of a whole game being played. And if you understand it's driven by money, you have to be careful. Stay with good food, whole food. If it's in food, chances are it's going to be good for you. So, that's
the more natural food. It's certainly not something that we make like Doritos or something.
Right.
It's not like the processed food.
Right. You can trace it back, not to a chemical, but you can actually trace it back to a tree, a plant. Yeah.
So Larry, thank you so much. It's like so valuable, and people can reach you on your website, and we'll put that here at the bottom. And they can take your classes to find out more information. They can read your book, which is wonderful. There's an elephant in the room. So all of this, please, everyone who's listening, this is critical information for our well-being, for our health. Is there anything last that you would like to end with, Larry?
I'll just say there is a chapter in the book on vitamins and minerals. So sometimes trying to hold on to all this gets to be difficult. I've been years with it, so it's a little easier for me. But there are resources there, and so you can refer back to these wonderful books. I mentioned Dr. Campbell's book, Whole. These are wonderful resources to help you and kind of guide you along the path. It gets difficult. There's no question. I wouldn't be in this field except for my wife was sick, and she was sick living in this world, and we didn't know what, she was young, and we didn't know why things were not going well for her. And as she continued to decline over 15 years, her life was on the line. And so to find out truths that could turn her life around so that she didn't die, and she now has a quality of life that is what we all wish for, to have that happen and to have it almost lost for no reason except for knowledge that there is this paradigm in the world. We think that people are looking out for us, and we have good doctors and we have good things. It's not to disparage anything, but the healthcare system is a sick care system. It's not for health. And even in nutrition, lots of times it's driven by nutraceutical companies who have an agenda to sell. You have to find the reputable ones who know and understand, because your life can depend on it. And these little things that you do day by day, we've been 20 years now, and I feel like I'm still I've gone back in time. I feel like I'm in my 30s and I'm 67. So, and my wife is the same way. When you get health back and you feel vitality and you feel energy and you feel passion for living and making a difference, that's what life is meant to be. But when you don't have these essential elements in your body, then we get sick and our world closes down and collapses on us. And it's sad because we're hurting and suffering, and there's no reason to do that. But finding out where these hidden truths are is vital. And so, Kathleen, I appreciate your work that you invested to do this, to bring this information to the world and to bless people's lives. So thank you for allowing me to be with you.
Thank you, Larry. You're my hero too, because your work is so important, and your expertise, not only in the vitamin mineral industry, which you have shared today, but also in the new field of glycoscience. So thank you so much, Larry, and take good care of yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathleen.